So one morning over the summer, I woke up feeling really inspired. Dangerous, I know, dangerous way to start a talk. So I went into my office to this big whiteboard wall and I began drawing out what I would later call my life map. And on this map, not only did I include all of the things that I was already doing, but all the things that I could and I should and therefore plan to be doing come the dawn of my fall semester. It looked a little something like this. Yeah, so when I was finished, I stepped back. I realized that's a bit much. So I erased about 2 things, thought that was a pretty good compromise, and I went on. Okay, fast forward about 3 days, maybe, into my fall semester. This stood no chance. My reality looked a little more like this. And believe me, these 5 things alone were wearing me out. And I hated this. I hated this because along with the rest of my generation, I want my life to feel big. There is so much that this world needs, so much change that needs to happen, and I want to trailblaze it, and yet here I stood with my 5 things, feeling like I'm working so hard, but just disappointing myself and everybody else in the process. And right about the time that I was going to come to God with what I considered personal failures, he interrupted me with one word of explanation on what he'd been doing. And this word has not only changed how I view the semester, but how I measure true progress in general. He said the word concentrate. So today I want to dive into that word and what it is to live a distilled, concentrated life in a diluted, exhausted, and ambitious age. So let's start with some definitions. I know the first thing that our mind goes to when we hear that word is this first definition, meaning to focus one's attention or mental effort on a particular object or activity. And I think that's important, but there's a second definition that I think gets at what we need to talk about today. And it's this. It means to increase the strength or proportion of a substance by removing or reducing any other diluting agent. It means stripping back everything that's not contributing until only a concentrated form of a substance remains. For me personally, this means to get more of myself, just in less space. And I think this word is important today as we go forward talking about our country, because here's what I see happening. I see a generation eager to heal our divided nation and willing to take on 1,000,000 things in order to do it. However, we only have so much of ourselves to give. Our ambitions and our limitations are at war with each other. And we don't know how to reconcile that, and so often we end up doing very little. And we settle for this idea of impact and change, and too often get confused that our mental hyperactivity is actual productivity. So today, rather than speaking about the actual issues that we're facing, I want to look at this issue from the side and focus more on our methodology. And in essence, in the next couple of minutes, I want to turn our view of efficiency and effective change on its head and not keep asking you to do more with less, but rather, I'd rather us all commit to doing a little bit less, but with a whole lot more of ourselves. There is some really interesting research out there about what prompts people to action. For instance, in 1995, Columbia University put on some studies on the art of choosing. And in this research, they found out that people prefer the idea of a bunch of options, ergo my life map. However, they are far more likely to actually get up and move if fewer options are available. Similarly, in his book, The Death of Expertise, Thomas Nichols writes this: "These are dangerous times. Never have so many people had so much access to so much knowledge and yet been so resistant to learning anything." I say these 2 points to stress this. We operate best when our lives are distilled, when there is less room for so many options, but I want to push it even a little bit further. Allowing yourself to have so many options, opportunities, and obligations in your life is allowing yourself an excuse for inaction and half-hearted effort. If we want to truly be effective and change the world for Christ, we need to boil it down. We don't need to be bigger and wider and thinly spread. We need to be compact, deeper, focused, and deeply committed. So how do we do it? How do we distill our lives? I wish I had a 5-step process that I could give you. However, I don't think the process is that easy, and I think it's going to require things of each of you that I can't generalize from up here. So instead, I'd rather just ask you a question that has started this process for me, and hopefully it will spark something in your life. The question is really simple, and you heard it from Megan. It's, what do your habits say about your priorities? Not what do your habits say about how good you are at what you do or how successful you're going to be one day, but what do your priorities say about what matters to you today? So this question has come to a head for me a lot this semester because about 4 months ago, I moved in with my grandparents. And it has been one of the most incredible and sometimes convicting seasons of my life. Because you see, my grandparents and I, we live very different lives and at very different paces. However, they are professionals at knowing what truly matters and acting on it. My grandparents would drop anything for me. And I've been challenged this semester to see, would I truly do the same for them? Because I know myself, and I know I have the capacity to work myself into oblivion for no other reason than an achievement and an approval high. And I can't tell you the number of times that I've walked into our house with a million things to do, but I'm confronted with the reality that the most productive thing that could be done in that moment is just to sit down with my grandmother. And a natural distilling has come over my life, or at least it started, because I'm learning certain obligations are just going to have to wait, because she and we gotta watch another episode of Everybody Loves Raymond. Or we need to play piano again together because she's the one who taught me some 20 years ago. And regardless of what it is that we're doing, it's becoming easier and easier for me to make space for them in my life because they're growing in priority, and that affects what I do and in what order I do it. I say all of this to stress this point. If your priorities are just an idea and they do not infiltrate your actions and interrupt your habits, they are not priorities, period. So yes, my grandparents are a priority, and that's changing me and how I do things. However, let's zoom out and maybe ask a slightly bigger question. What do your habits say about your relationship with God? We see this question come to a head in Scripture when we stumble upon two very famous sisters, Mary and Martha, and we see Jesus respond to this very hardworking, overachieving woman by saying this: "You are worried and upset about so many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken from her." If we truly want to change our culture and our world for Christ, but we cannot slow down and interrupt our habits long enough to acknowledge him, something is wrong and our work is in vain. I love that phrase. Few things are needed, or indeed only one. He's asking Martha to concentrate. And I really think he's asking us to do the same. So as I close, I want to preface with this. I talk a big game up here because I recognize that this process is so important. However, I also recognize that it is incredibly hard, and I am not good at it, nowhere near yet. It comes at the cost of forsaking our culture, our comfort, our habits, and honestly, our ideas for success. However, even in the midst of what feels like having to give up so much for the sake of concentration, C.S. Lewis speaks to the incredible and almost ironic hope that we have. He says this: "To love you as I should, I must worship God as creator. And when I have learned to love God better than you, I shall love you better than I do now. And insofar as I learn to love you at the expense of God or instead of God, I shall be moving towards the state in which I shall not love you at all." Hear this. When first things are put first, second things are not suppressed, but increased. If we are willing to enter into this process of reassessing priorities, if we are willing to cut the things in our lives that are just adding to the noise and actually just commit fully to our 5 things or whatever it is for you, if we are willing to focus back in on the center where few things are needed, indeed, truly, only one, I believe C.S. Lewis's words will ring true. When first things are put first, second things are going to rise. The world awaits the lasting change that we can offer, the real, tangible change you can offer, if we would just slow down and concentrate. Thank you.